supporting you in your dog parenting journey. The Dynamic Dog Owner with Debbie Potter. Hello and welcome to The Dynamic Dog Owner, the podcast to support you, the dog parent, in your parenting journey. We don't talk about the how-tos of training, but we do talk about how to adapt your life and adapt your approach, how to make you feel better as a dog parent, because I'm sure most people will agree that getting a dog or a puppy was a lot more than you expected it to be. You have a lot more emotions, a lot more feelings and pressures that you didn't expect would happen when you first welcomed that little ball of fluff or that new rescue into your life. Today we are going to be talking about prioritising, how to prioritise your training needs, your training efforts, to make sure that you are focusing on the important stuff and not sweating over stuff that is not necessarily as important. I'm sure you'll agree that when you welcome a new dog into your life, there are 1,000,001 things that you need to do, or there are 1,000,001 goals, things you need to teach them, things you need to show them. You know, if you're welcoming a new puppy, you've not just got puppy training, but you've got the toilet training, the puppy biting, the sleeping at night, learning how to leave them on their own, socialising, which is obviously a big topic. You've also got the training, the social skills, the adolescence phase to go through, the not picking up your slippers, not chewing the furniture. What do you start with? And equally, if you've welcomed a rescue dog into the house or an older dog, yes, we haven't necessarily got the puppy challenges that we might have, but often new dogs will still need to learn the basics of the house rules. So what's allowed, what's not, where you're allowed, where you're not, where to go to the toilet, whether they're allowed on the sofa or not. Some, depending on how old your rescue or adult dog is, will still choose stuff that they shouldn't. You may welcome a dog that has some extra additional needs, so you may be a little bit scared, a little bit nervous, timid, wary about the world, not overly confident with other dogs. Where do you start? Where do you start? Now, everyone's different, and some people are very much a wing it type. We'll just see what happens. We'll just go with the flow and work on whatever needs to be worked on at that moment in time. Other people, maybe a little bit more like me, and would like to be extremely planned. So I like to be planned and prepared and know what I'm doing. Not so much now I'm on like the third, fourth puppy in the family, but the first time I got a puppy, I was adamant I wanted to get everything right. And for me, that means preparing. And so for the first puppy, I wrote lists. I wrote training plans. I had about 10 pages on the kitchen's surfaces, also on like the kitchen cabinets, saying week 1, we're going to work on these things. Week 2, we're going to work on these things. It was probably a little bit too organised, but it helped me to feel confident. And you've probably heard there's a saying, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. I can't remember who that quote is by, but it is a famous quote. So for me, I like to be prepared. I like to go into things, or I used to like to go into things like planned to the letter so that I knew exactly what the plan was. Now I'm a little bit more relaxed because I've done the puppy thing a few times. I know where my importance lies. But I know when my mum got a puppy, we had to do the plan. So I would write her plans and lists of what I think she should do each week. Because again, she felt overwhelmed. I've not had a puppy before. So it doesn't matter which way you are. You know, let's say that to begin with. You work with whatever you're comfortable with. And if you're a planner, great. If you are a bit more of a let's go with the flow, that's cool too. But we're going to look at today, what are the important things? And how to kind of rank them as to which things I should focus on and which things I could maybe leave for another day. So first things first, I think the most common thing that people teach any dog first is how to sit. I've never met a dog, actually I've only met one dog, I have met one dog who could not sit and did not know how to do it. The owner hadn't taught them and they were about a year, 18 months old. Not a problem. Interesting, not a problem, but 99.9% of dogs that I meet all know how to sit. Whether they can sit for a long period of time or not is by the by. They can all sit because majority of people teach their puppy or their new dog to sit first. For me, training is so much more than just teaching a dog how to sit. Sit is probably one of the latter things I teach. And again, that has changed throughout my journey. So with Dave, it was definitely one of the first things I taught him. Sit down, stand was the first thing he knew. But as my skills and my approach and my views have changed, Fred is not a sitter. It's taken him a long time. It wasn't something we focused on much as a puppy because we were dealing with other stuff. And he naturally, as he was growing, he just wasn't comfortable with sitting. And that can be really common with young dogs because obviously as they're growing, they're always growing, their body's changing. It can feel a bit weird and a bit uncomfortable. So it is really common that growing dogs aren't comfortable sitting. So it was perfectly fine that Fred didn't. And it took us until he was probably about 18 months old for us to get a decent sit. But equally, if you take your dog to a pet shop, what do people ask them to do? Sit if you want a treat. Why does my dog need to sit to have a treat? They're standing next to you. They're very polite. They're not jumping. They can have a treat just for standing. That's cool too. And there's nothing wrong with teaching a dog to sit. It is very useful. But personally, my opinion, it's something we can talk about another day, is that sit is overused. So how do we know what the most important things are? And my kind of way to look at this is firstly, what do you want your dog's future to look like? Obviously, we don't have crystal balls, but we can have an idea. For example, do I want my dog to be a family pet living in the home as they are, chilled out in the house? Do I want to take my dog on long walks? Therefore, I need to focus on lead work. Do I want my dog to be an assistance dog? Do I want to compete in a certain sport with my dog? Do I just want to live a happy life with my dog? See what I mean? What is your goal? Because that will affect where your importance lies. So if obviously your goal is to have the best agility dog in the world, from a very, very young age, you are going to be working on pre-agility. So start line weights, feeling confident stepping over jumps, focusing on cues and learning how to navigate, not the big stuff, because obviously they can't do that till they're much older, but low level. Can they stand on a surface? Can they feel confident with a surface wobbling like a seesaw? Those are the things you're going to work on, because for your dog's goal, those are the important things. If you want to train the best agility dog in the world, you are not going to be focusing on recall necessarily, because that's not your goal. I think most traditional family owners, their main focus is that their dog is polite and that they have good recall and lead work, which is really good goals. Do you want your dog to go on holiday with you? If you are, let's think about random stuff. If you have a boat, some people might have a boat listening. Do you have a boat? If you have a boat, then naturally you're going to want your dog to get used to being on a boat, walking near water, being near water and not jumping in it, not chasing ducks or birds, things like that. That's going to be your priority. So what life do you want for your dog? What is your dog's life going to look like in 2 or 3 years? Because then we can start working out what is important. So is it, for example, sitting? Is it being chill around other things? For example, my favourite place in the world is the Lake District. I have been going to the Lake District every single year since I met my husband, which was probably about 18, 19 years ago. Don't remember. I haven't worked it out. So for us, dogs being comfortable in the Lake District, walking on a lead around sheep is incredibly important. That is one of the things that for me, it means that my holiday is not as enjoyable if you're going to drag me after every sheep you see. And there are lots of sheep in the Lake District. So as soon as possible, I try and introduce them to sheep. Not like, let's say hello to a sheep, but there are sheep in the distance. Let's ignore them. Let's walk past sheep fields. Let's just get used to being sheep are there. I've been quite fortunate. My last 2 dogs have been puppies, like 12 weeks old when we've gone to the Lake District. So they've got used to sheep from a young age. Rem ignores them completely. He'd literally walk past a flock of sheep and not give them monkeys. Fred, on the other hand, is fine while they're still, but as soon as they move, he's got a really strong desire to chase stuff that moves. So he becomes quite interested. It's something we are still working on. But for him, sheep is important. So, both of them, being around sheep, ignoring them, for me is an important one because it means I can enjoy my holiday. That particular holiday, recall's not an issue. I don't let them off because there are sheep everywhere and I don't want to get into any issues. So it's not an issue for me. But generally, those are the type of things I mean. What is your dog's life going to look like and what things do you want them to be good at in the future? So what I would suggest you do is almost make a list of all the things that you want for your dog and almost make a list into the ideals. So this is an ideal. In an ideal world, I would love this. These are the things that would be incredibly useful. And then the third list is absolutely essential. So, for example, on your essentials list, you might have not chewing furniture. To me, that is an essential. I don't want my dogs chewing furniture. Toilet training tends to be on the essentials list because it's not nice having to clean up accidents all the time. Walking on the lead work, those type of things, for majority of people are the essentials. Then you've got your ideals. So the ideals are that you can settle in a cafe. For me, it's not essential. It would definitely make my life easier because it's not something my dogs are that good at because it's not something we practice. But it's an ideal thing. I'd love it if you'd chill out in a pub for 4 hours. I ideally would like you to be able to walk past people and dogs. If you don't, we can manage it. That's cool. But it's an ideal on my list. And the sort of daydreaming, oh my God, that would be amazing if, would be obviously to be able to take them anywhere, do anything I want with them, and for them to just be perfect. That is a bit boring though. So those are kind of like how you can categorize them. And obviously your list will be completely different. Your list will be unique to you and your family and your dog. Now, obviously we have to be realistic because if we're not realistic, then, we're going to set ourselves up to fail. So everything can't go on your essentials list because everything can't be essential. But what you can do is, if you want everything to be completed eventually, is almost set like stages. So my essentials for puppy, my essentials by the time you're 6 months old, my essentials by the time you're a year old, 4 years, etc. So you can almost have like a scale. And obviously this list could change. That when you're a first puppy, this is the most important thing right now. When we've cracked that, okay, what else could be bumped up onto the essentials list? But it gives you an idea as to where you want to focus your attention. So most people, for example, as I said, ask their dog to sit first and foremost, and they teach a sit, say, in the house. That's the thing they work on the most, which is a really good thing to work on, don't get me wrong. But what we often find is then people say to us that their lead work is really tough or their recall is really tough. Why? Obviously, there's so many different factors. There's other podcast episodes, so listen back to them. There's one that's all about lead work and one that's all about recall. So look those up. But obviously, if we aren't putting in enough focus on lead work, for example, naturally it's not going to be as good as our sit. If you every single day practice a sit to cross the road, a sit when I open the front door, a sit when I put your dinner bowl down, a sit when I want to give you a treat. How many times are you rewarding and encouraging a sit? Count it up. It might be quite interesting. I rarely ask my dogs to sit, I think. They do it naturally. I don't know why, because I don't really ask for it much. But I do occasionally obviously ask for a sit because who doesn't? But on an average day, I don't know, the average person probably asks their dog to sit 10 times, 15 times. Don't know. Everyone's number will be different. Now, when you compare that to lead work or recall, how many times in one day do you practice your recall? Now, remember, this is training a recall, not testing a recall. Again, head back to a previous episode, training, not testing. Training is about teaching our dog what we want them to do and reinforcing the behaviour we want and setting up a situation for them to get it right. Not, they're in a field, I call them, will they come, will they not, crossed fingers, hoping. So how many times do you actively say their recall cue, knowing they're going to listen and come back to you and get their reward in a day, how many times do you reward them for loose lead walking and work on loose lead walking? Is it 10 or 15 times a day? Or is it less? Because there's a lovely saying that I might can't use all the time because it makes sense, and I think it makes sense to most people, is what gets treated gets repeated. It rhymes. So basically it's treated, we say, as obviously because we think of them as being treats, but whatever gets rewarded, however that may be, if your dog does something, they get a reward, even if it's not a reward you've given them, but say they get to go and run off in a muddy puddle. If they enjoyed it, they are naturally going to want to do that again. And if the opportunity arises, will. So we need to make sure that we are treating the things we want repeated. So for example, if we practice our sit 15 times a day, but we only practice our recall cue 5 times a day, it's a no-brainer that your sit is going to be stronger than your recall. So if we've got this list, we can then have a priority list. So for example, top of my list is recall, second on my list is loose lead walking, always a controversial subject. Which one do you prefer? We could have a podcast episode about that, actually. So then, what is on my third list? You can have those 1, 2, 3, and make sure you're putting the most attention into those top 3 items that you want to work on. Or if you want to do one at a time, focus on that one. The other thing to look at is, how is this affecting my life? Because some things are affecting your life and your happiness and your dog's happiness and your family's sort of not happiness, but contentment, impact, those kind of things. How much are these individual things affecting your day-to-day life and you and your dog's enjoyment? Because then again, it almost shows us not what we want for the future, but what is important right now. So for example, say you've got, let's call him Jim. So we've got a dog called Jim, and he is chewing up your slippers. He barks when you eat the dinner table. And his recall's a bit naff. Which is the most important out of those 3? And obviously this is very, very individual to the person, but I would look at which, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it, or how much is it causing me an issue? So for example, if it was me looking at Jim and it was my life, I would say the recall for me isn't an issue right now because I can just choose not to let you off the lead. Easy fix, that one. I can choose not to let you off the lead and I can work on it when we've got time. But you chewing up my stuff is really blimmin' annoying. I don't want to have to keep buying new pairs of shoes. I don't want to have to keep buying new furniture. I get cross. I get worried because you're chewing stuff you shouldn't and you might get into trouble. That one for me is at the top of the list. And the barking at the dinner table, I can tolerate it, but it's really quite annoying. The neighbours might complain soon. So for me, that would be like, those 2 would be kind of at the top of the list. Which one would I pick over the other? I'd probably say the chewing, because I don't want my stuff chewed. So for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, that one is affecting my life the most. And that's the one I want to fix first. So then you've almost, again, got not just the how important are these things as to whether they're on my essentials, my ideal and my in a dream world list, but you've also got how much is this affecting my life right now? And then it gives you an idea of where you want to put your focus, because, it's always the way we naturally, we focus on the stuff our dogs do wrong. I mean, I'm sure you all do. If I asked you to list 10 things you want to change about your dog, it would be easy. If I said list 10 things that you love and your dog does amazing, generally people find that list harder because I think it's human nature. We focus on the negatives. That's just how we are. But if we then have that list of how much is it affecting me, we've then got priorities. We know where we want to focus our intention. And then you can almost make a training plan and it can say, what do I want to work on this week? So this week I want to work on preventing chewing, and on my essentials list is my lead work. So again, lead work for me is really important because I prefer lead work over recall. But that's a personal preference. So this list isn't I think you should put your attention into recall first. I think you should work on this, because every dog, every human, every person, every life has a different priority, and every all your situations are very, very unique to you. So this is very much a bit of a self-reflection almost on your priorities. How do you prioritize what you want? And obviously sometimes it's really hard to do this, so it may be something you sit down and do as a family. You all make your own list. Whoever wants to get involved, make your own list as a family, or make your individual lists, compare them, and then pick bits out of everybody's. Because what affects you and what you may see as being really, really important or affecting your life, somebody else in your family might go, that doesn't bother me in the slightest. But this is really important to me. So we can then make sure that everybody in the house is having something that's important to them worked on. Sometimes it may be that you need a bit of help. It's sometimes really hard when you're in a situation. It's really hard to see it clearly sometimes. It's so much easier if you are one step out of the situation, looking in, seeing it from a different perspective. And that's where obviously everything comes from. That's where you work with counsellors, that's where you work with friends might say, have you noticed this? Or, for us as dog trainers, we see so much more because we're looking from the outside in. When we're looking at a handler, so a person and a dog working together, we're seeing it from an outside perspective. We're seeing what the human's doing and we're seeing what the dog's doing. When you're training, you only see it from your perspective. So you're looking down at your dog, you see it from one view. Your dog obviously looks up and sees it from their point of view. We are that one step further removed and we see the whole picture. So it may be that you need an external member of external from the family to actually look at your priority list, or look at definitely the how much is it affecting my life, because it may just be things you haven't looked at and things you hadn't considered. And obviously that's where extra family members, friends might put their input, or of course your dog trainer, because dog trainers are not just about being here to support you or teach you how to make your dog sit. We are here to help you get a better life with your dog. So it may be that you can approach your dog trainer, or if you're not in our community yet, head over into our community and ask, what in this situation, what would you see as being most important? Because this is where we aren't just teaching you how to train your dog, we are coaches helping you have the better life with your dog and reaching your goals with your dog, so that you can all have that happy, perfect, ideal dog life. Obviously this is a few tips about how to prioritize. And don't forget, everyone's list is going to be so different and your list can change. What you see as a priority this week may not be a priority next week. And obviously when it comes to training, we know that life is tricky. There are challenges. Some weeks you have more time than others. So setting yourself realistic goals of, not that I want, my things on my essential list or the things that are affecting my life being fixed next week. We need to give it a bit more time. But in the short term, so the next 2 or 3 months, these are the things that I would really, really like to crack. In the next sort of 6 months to a year, this is my next stuff. And then obviously the longer term goals too. If you need some help creating your prioritizing list, or looking at the different aspects, then obviously do head into our training community, because we're always here to help you. And you can sign up to our emails in the link in the description. And hopefully you can spend some time later, grab a cup of tea. Or if you're like me, don't drink tea, hot chocolate, water, whatever floats your boat. Sit down with a pen and paper and just write down, what are my priorities? So your essentials, your ideals, and your perfect dog. And then the scale of 1 to 10 of how much, or what are the things that are currently affecting our day-to-day life, and prioritizing those, making a list, which ones are on which list, what is the scale of 1 to 10 of how much is it affecting me. And then you've got that little idea of where to start, because starting is the hardest bit. We've got I know, myself, I've got like lists of things. I want to do this with you, I need to do that with you, I need to do this with you. Getting started and knowing where to start is often that biggest hurdle. So this will help you to create that list and know the first thing to work on. Because that first thing and making that first step is going to be always the hardest. But once you're on that path, naturally it'll be easier to move on to the next things, and soon all the things on your essential list will be cracked. Have a wonderful week. Have some fun prioritising, and I will catch up with you all really soon. Thank you for listening to The Dynamic Dog Owner with me, Debbie Potter. See you next time.